Hey, good morning, folks. How are we doing this beautiful day? We're going to try this again, a morning walkabout in downtown Kingman, Arizona. It's another episode of On the Road with Jim. Today we're starting down here at the Benelli House in Kingman, Arizona. I'm going to give you a little sneak preview of a walking tour. It is offered through Desert Wonder Tours, a limited partnership that I have with them. Great way to enhance your visit to the area. I recommend an evening walking tour so we can enjoy the neon. We're going to start right here. This is going to be a little bit of a teaser for you. This is now a public defender's office court building, but this was in 1939. This was the Methodist Episcopal Church, and in March 1939, two celebrities showed up from California and were married at this location. Clark Gable and Carol Lombard. Now, I'm not much for giving away on legends. Story is they honeymooned in Oatman. Well, all I can tell you about that is that if they honeymooned in Oatman, it was a short trip, because they were married here about 3:30 in the afternoon, and well, a little reception down at the Brunswick Hotel downtown Kingman, and then they were back in Los Angeles the next morning for a press conference. So you fill in the blanks about that honeymoon story. The Benelli House is kind of a really overlooked little place run by the Mojave Museum of History and Arts. Built in 1915, it was a real showpiece. The Benelli family were Swiss immigrants, very active in early ranching here and in a wide array of Kingman developments. The house is very unique in that it retains a lot of its original furnishings from 1915. It's a great tour if you get a chance. And there is a bit of a Route 66 connection. The Benelli family had a place called Fig Springs Ranch out in the Black Mountains, on the east slope of the Black Mountains. In the 1930s, they established Fig Springs Station along Route 66, and George Rittenhouse, in his book published in 1946, noted that the station was closed at that time. Here's something I never tire of: the skyline in Kingman. Take a look at those buttes and mesas. Isn't that just amazing? We're going to encounter some noises today because Kingman's a railroad town, for one thing, and there's a bit of construction going on. The new Mojave County Courthouse. There's the old county courthouse right beside it. Now, hidden between the new and the old is another little gem that a lot of people miss and they overlook. To the best of my knowledge, there's only 2 or 3 freestanding Arizona territorial era jails left in the state of Arizona. One of them is hiding right back there. Can you see it? There she is. A lot of little gems hidden around Kingman. You get exploring. One of the nice things about the historic district, especially in the BC era, before COVID, is it's ideally suited for a walkabout downtown Kingman. Your main historic business district is 5-6 blocks square, and packed in that, of course, is microbreweries and, you know, things of that nature. And there's your Mohave County Courthouse, all built to locally quarried stone. Coming up on your right is the 1903 Elks building. It's now a small event center, and that was also Kingman's first movie theater, movie palace, if you will. Another little treasure we have here. City complex. On the next corner behind the trees, the little red brick building. That is was our first dedicated schoolhouse, dating to about 1899. To show you how little Kingman changed over the years, this served as the public library for many, many years. And when I was a boy, I got my first library card at the library there. My boy, who's now in his 30s, he got his first library card there. This building here is now city offices of planning and zoning, and it opened in the 1930s as the post office. Now, up your alley over here, Leah Burkhart's place, Gracie's Vintage. There's your the old schoolhouse. Now that's part of the municipal court system. Over here by up your alley, that's Gracie Vintage, Leah Burkhart's place. And the upstairs in the back is a neat Airbnb, Gracie's Vintage. You just have to get used to trains in downtown Kingman. Kingman was founded as a railroad community. Is actually a railroad work camp on the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad back around 1880, 1881. It's named after Lewis Kingman, railroad survey engineer. Now, Leah's place back in the 50s was a little restaurant called the Chocolate Shop. Beale Celebrations was J.C. Penney's in the 1950s. The Beale Celebrations sign is an example of something we're very, very fortunate to have here. Legacy signs. Matt Phillips and his father do sign work here. All kinds, digital, billboards, but there's passion, especially is neon. You can see their handiwork on it caught me there. Gimbal's giving me a little bit of problems, but Beale Celebrations. The red tile building that I was trying to show you there, my gimbal went offline and kind of got me stuck in the picture. That was Sprouse Wright's 5 and dime. Now we have an eclectic array of shops downtown. building across the street on the corner, the Art Hub. The Art Hub was originally a Valley National Bank, but the entire complex, stretching from the alley down here on 4th Street, all the way over here to Floyd and Company's, was Central Commercial Store. And Central Commercial was a major outlet here in western Arizona. When the store opened in 1917, it was such a big event that it received a write-up in New York newspapers. And the Central Commercial folks, they had stores in Seligman, Gold Road, Oatman, Arizona, Chloride, and Ash Fork, as well as a trucking company supplying all these different stores. This is now the Art Hub. But if you look inside, you can still see the vault from the bank. This is also part of the Central Commercial Complex. The blocks here in the sidewalk were to allow light into the basement. The hardware store, auto parts, ranch supplies were all down in the basement. And this store survived up into the 1970s. And here you can see some of the original tile work from 1917 advertising the Central Commercial Company. Coming up on Andy Devine Avenue, which is Route 66. Andy Devine, you might, if you're not familiar with Andy, Google search. He was a prolific character actor. Hundreds upon hundreds of movies from the 20s well up into the 60s. Known for a real gravelly voice. His father, Tom Devine, was the proprietor at the Hotel Beale. We'll get to the Hotel Beale in a minute. When I was a kid, this town was very much a Mayberry experience. And I got to tell you, when I first moved out here into the deserts of Arizona back in the summer of '66, I thought this was the place they warned me about in Sunday school. Bob Wall's barbershop was here. He cut hair here from the 1950s into the 1990s. El Palacio Mexican Restaurant, this was a drugstore and a soda fountain. It's one of our oldest commercial buildings. It opened about 1898. The facade was kind of renovated to give it an Art Deco appearance in the 1930s. What you're looking at straight ahead here, this is 4th Street going across the tracks, and if you go down as far as to the edge of the hill, about 4 blocks down and you turn right, it's National Old Trails Road. National Old Trails Road followed into Kingman, and on South Front Street, which is now Topeka, the other side of the tracks, it turned east. After 1921, it came across the tracks. Route 66 followed this until 1937, and then in 1937 it was realigned down what was then Front Street, Andy Devine Avenue. This blank corner across the street was the Harvey House. Of course, the railroad depot, now a railroad museum and Amtrak station. Beautiful Loveland and Withers building was on this corner, late 19th century, burned in the early 1950s. The Hotel Beale has a real uncertain future. We don't know where we're going with the Hotel Beale. Sculpture by Don Gianella, really acclaimed artist. Hotel Beale is an amazing place, lots and lots of history. Aside from Andy Devine, in the late 1920s, Charles Lindbergh was putting in the TAT, Transcontinental Air Transport Service. And putting the first passenger air terminals along the railroad so you could fly and take the train and double your speeds along the. Well, he was a guest at the Hotel Beale, and his name is framed from the page from the guest register is framed in the upstairs hall. Charles Lindbergh. Buster Keaton was a guest. 1925, filming a movie called Go West. Amelia Earhart stayed here for the ribbon cutting. This little nondescript door here goes downstairs to the Sump Bar. Louis L'Amour, when he was boxing started his amateur boxing career in the 1920s, he was working down at the Catherine Mines and did a little bit of amateur boxing down at the Sump Bar. Most everything on this side of the tracks, you can see, has been erased. It was mostly lumber company, railroad warehouses, things of that nature. COVID has got us shut down for quite some time. This the Sportsman's Bar is a true territorial era Western saloon, almost totally unchanged. It's a fun little place. It's a little scary and intimidating at first because it's very rough around the edges, but it is really, really a neat place. Hotel Brunswick's in a state of limbo. A little bit of celebrity association here as well. Summer of 1916, Edsel Ford and some college buddies followed the National Old Trails Road out to California. And July 16th, they stayed here at the Brunswick Hotel, 1915. And to give you an idea of road conditions, about 150 miles up there to Williams in those days on that road. And they left that morning from Williams and arrived at the hotel at midnight. If you have a group or want a great lunch, you cannot go wrong with Garibaldi's. Luigi does a tremendous, tremendous job. Another one of the real prizes that we have in Kingman is the Route 66 Association of Kingman, been around since 1994. And they just quietly work under the radar. They charge $100 a year, 100% of all proceeds. They don't go to strictly community projects, community promotion, community renovations, things of that nature. And one of the ones they helped is like the facade of the Old Trails garage and restoration of the Packard sign. The garage here dates to about 1914. Another example of the Route 66 Association of Kingman is little signs like this. Starting to do a lot of public works, public art projects here in Kingman. This was the site of the Desert Drug Frontier Cafe, Frontier Bar, Frontier Lounge. More of Legacy Signs handiwork. Route 66 Post Office, Walgreen Agency, Desert Drugs. That sign has been resurrected. It was behind me on that corner. This is a project that the Route 66 Association of Kingman launched a while back, is to collect and restore vintage signs and then put them up with a little kiosk telling a bit of the history, creating a corridor. We had a torrential downpour the other night, first rain in a long time. This is kind of one of the little sore spots for me. In 2014, we launched the City of Kingman hosted the 2014 Route 66 International Festival, and we introduced the Route 66 Walk of Fame. And for reasons unknown, the city abandoned the project, and it's kind of a sore spot with me. But that's another story entirely. As I mentioned, here's an example of the neon that's being restored through legacy signs. This is the type of kiosk we envision with these signs. Give a little bit of a history of the location where the sign was originally at. As you can see, I'm kind of new with this gimbal. This is a new little project. We're taking it to the next level. These On the Road with Jim programs are sponsored by Louis Keene at Uranus Fudge Company and General Store in near St. Robert, Missouri. I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Louis. And of course, our crowdfunding initiative on Patreon helps acquisition of equipment and well, the time involved in putting these programs together. This is an interesting little building here. This is a cafe, or excuse me, was a cafe. And we have yet to determine who the actual builder was. But there was a trademark. You can see the white quartz stone around the windows. And we have quite a few buildings in Kingman with that same signature work. From the 1936 Assembly of God Church, the 1929 Siesta Motel. May not seem like much, but here's a little bit of a rarity. This opened as a gas station in 1947. Now, down the street here on 2nd Street, you notice where it says Packard and Duke's Auto Repair. Well, the Packard sign I showed you previously, the first time we see it was actually on this building. And there's a little discrepancy about where the Packard dealer went after that. The Packard sign was recovered from the Old Trails garage, been there since the 1940s. Dutton Motors. Now this is a very unique and historic little spot for people of Route 66 interest. You notice the little gray garage building here in the back. That's the last remnant of a machine shop that stood here in the 1930s. Machine shop and garage. The Dutton family was a very long association with Route 66. They, N.R. Dutton had a garage in Gold Road, Arizona. And in the book by Jack Rittenhouse, the 1946 book by Jack Rittenhouse, he noted there was a towing service in Gold Road for pulling cars over the pass. Well, that was N.R. Dutton. And Roy Dutton was a tow truck driver out there for a bit in the 30s. Well, this was Taylor Owen Ford, built in 1946. Now, a real quick little trivia to deviate before I get into the Dutton story. These street lights were purchased at a city auction in Los Angeles, and they date back into the teens from Los Angeles city streets. Dutton Motors. This was Taylor Owen Ford, and it was purchased by N.R. Dutton in 1946. Roy Dutton later became the manager and owner. Scott Dutton owns the property now and manages it. And Scott is also the president of the Kingman Route 66 Association. This is their offices. There's also a model made by Willem Boer, the acclaimed Dutch artist, on display inside. And it's a classic car facility as well as an automotive museum. You can see the sign across the street. That lists all the Route 66 sign, and it lists all of the cities listed in the song Get Your Kicks on Route 66 in order with mileage, and that was funded by the Kingman Route 66 Association. Across the street is the Powerhouse Visitor Center. Built in 1907, it supplied all the power for this area until the completion of Hoover Dam. My pa always said, better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. So here's something for you. Mr. D's Route 66 Diner. Pretty famous place on the road. And it appears to be a caricature, what you expect to see in a 1950s diner. Actuality, it's an authentic Route 66 diner masquerading as a caricature. It opened in 1939 as the Chemo Cafe, K-I for Kingman, M-O for Mojave County, and it was a gas station and a shell station and cafe. Straight ahead is Locomotive Park. Before the locomotive was brought here in 1957, that was our county fairgrounds. And there's a nice little episode there, a couple of pro ball games. Pittsburgh Pirates played there and Chicago Cubs, largely because George Grantham. I'll tell you more about his story a little bit later, but he played in the World Series back in the 20s. And he's buried here in the Kingman Mountain View Cemetery. Has a Route 66 connection that he was born in Galena, Kansas. Now on this next street, we'll go up one block to Beale Street and head back. Before COVID came in, we've been doing a fairly good job working with grassroots initiatives and business owners to put together a fairly good renaissance in downtown Kingman. And of course, a lot of things are in limbo, a lot of things are on hold, and well, that's going to make it a challenge. We'll have to see where this goes in the future. Another gas station repurposed. This one dates back to the early 1940s. The Route 66 corridor got a bit of an Arizona sunrise. When you book a walking tour, I really recommend doing an evening tour, especially in summer. Not only can you beat the heat, but we can get you a bit of the neon. Another 1940s garage. And then a little bit of trivia for you. The water level, I took out a couple weeks ago. We went out to Beale Springs and did a little bit of a walkabout. That's just north of Kingman. Well, the water table here in the valley this little bowl where Kingman sits. The water table was very close to the surface, so you could put down a well 75, 85 feet and have pretty good water. Well, in the late 19th century, Kingman was often proclaimed the windmill city. We had so many windmills downtown. One block up here on 2nd Street is one of the last vestiges, one of the last links to that. Here, we'll show that to you before we button this up. I'm glad you could join me this morning. I hope you enjoyed the adventure. I want to thank Louis Keene again for the support. Louis Keene down at Uranus Fudge Company and General Store, where juvenile humor reigns supreme, and the fudge is actually delicious. Escape rooms, it's just a family fun, juvenile humor, great place to stop. It's a quintessential roadside attraction that's a throwback to the old days on Route 66. This was a grocery store in the 1940s, and then when I was a kid, this was Finnegan's Hobby Store. The old Greyhound bus station. And like I say, this is just kind of a teaser, if you will. All the walking tours that I do through Desert Wonder Tours will be customized to your interest and needs and physical abilities. There you can see the windmill tower behind me. It's one of the last of its kind in Kingman. Pleasant little walkabout downtown Kingman, especially early in the mornings. The revival was a long time in coming, and as a result, like a lot of towns, we lost quite a few businesses. A local group was organized every Saturday morning here on Beale Street, a farmer's market. I'm pleased to announce that the old State Theater, dating back to about 1948, has been bought by a non-profit organization in the process of raising funds. They just completed a matching funds donation program to repair the roof. And that'll be a performing arts center as well as showing classic cinema. There's another example. You can see that a little gentrification is taking place. Some passionate young people are moving into the area and renovating storefronts. And I'm really sorry that they're having such issues with this COVID, because they have invested so much of their time and their money and their lives into putting this together. Public art is a big part of the Route 66 Association of Kingman. Murals. The signature murals, for those of the Route 66 fans, you're familiar with our railroad water tanks over on Andy Devine Avenue with the big locomotive on the front. That was done by the Route 66 Association of Kingman. You can see the State Theater there. And just mid-block, you can see the small door there. That was a barber shop. When I was a kid, we had 3 barbers downtown. And the one that was there liked to drink. He'd start drinking about 8 in the morning with his Coors beer at a refrigerator behind his barber chair. And then noon, he'd go down to the Frontier Lounge for a highball. And the running joke was you could always tell somebody who'd had a haircut at his barber shop in the afternoon, because, well, it just wasn't a pretty sight. The other barber we had here was next to the State Theater. He was a good old boy, but he scared the heck out of me as a kid. He was a World War I vet, and he had palsy. And he would use a straight razor to trim your neck and sideburns. And he'd have to hold one hand with the other hand so he'd be steady. It's kind of scary. Now, the Kingman Club is an authentic 1946. The building was empty for many, many years. Then it was acquired and turned into a microbrewery and restaurant. The old building next door that was condemned was torn down. And it's really quite a little complex. Well, we're back to just about where we started. In the next block, you would have Diana's Cellar Door, Floyd and Company, wood-fired barbecue and pizza. All highly recommended. And of course, Blackbridge Brewery, another award-winning microbrewery. And I want to give a shout out to them folks. If you're, in the summer, sometimes drinking beer, as good as it tastes, you want something, you need something a little lighter. And they make some of the best fresh ginger ale using a 100-plus-year-old recipe, non-alcoholic. Absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. Well, folks, I want to thank you for joining me this morning, and I hope you enjoyed this little teaser. You can find on the Arizona page of Jim Hinckley's America, you'll find a link to Desert Wonder Tours, and you can book a Kingman, Arizona Historic District walking tour through them. Folks, thank you for joining us this morning, and I hope I didn't bore you too much beating my gums. Take care, my friends. Join us again for another episode of On the Road with Jim, coming soon. And this Sunday morning, 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, live stream on our Facebook page, Jim Hinckley's America. It's Coffee with Jim. A little fun-filled, fast-paced, informative half hour. Take care, my friends. Adios.